So we talked a little bit about how it's really important to have motivation or motivated students. Many different ways that you can sort of increase motivation. Sort of simple ways by making the material relevant, to using humor in the classroom, or really to raise the energy level. And then once we have essentially goals and motivation, we really need to ensure that we have sort of goals that will really stretch the students sort of beyond the sort of minimal standards, right? So most growth is actually going to occur when learning efforts include sort of stretch goals, or goals that sort of feel a little bit beyond our capabilities, a little bit beyond sort of our abilities. But those goals should be obviously agreed upon by the teacher and the student. So you shouldn't have the teacher providing the goals. Have a way of sort of targeting sort of the learning of the effort, and making sort of the goals very understandable, very short term, very concrete, very systematic sort of approach to, once you accomplish this goal, then you're going to go on to the next one. The last two levels, unfortunately, we won't be able to talk as much about, because we do have to spend a lot of time talking about gainful employment as well, is that what I really want to emphasize is that if you can instill hope into a student, what you've ultimately done is have a student that believes that they're going to continue to sort of learn outside of the classroom. Really, having this sort of learning how to learn type of process. Then ultimately, once you believe that you can continue to learn how to learn even when someone's not teaching you, then the biggest part will be seeing yourself as something larger than just yourself, and contributing knowledge to others. So if you understand, or if students understand how they're part of a larger scheme, and they give back what they've learned to others, then they're really making societal sort of contributions. Okay, so when we think about the second half of this lecture, we're really looking at sort of this sort of two parts of a healthy lifestyle. So as Freud said, two parts of a healthy lifestyle are love and work. We're really going to focus in on work here. And so when we think about gainful employment, we think about really there's sort of these two major components to being satisfied at work. And so part of that is experiencing flow at work. And if you remember, flow is becoming so absorbed into what you're doing, you really lose track of time. It's really the sort of ideal sort of workspace where you're not thinking about anything but the task that you're on. Of course, that is going to be really important, but so are positive interpersonal relationships. And this is something that, actually 1950s sort of IBM culture really minimized. If you're happy at work, you tend to be really happy in life. And people who tend to be higher in happiness are those who are employed versus unemployed. I mean, that's sort of obvious in that sense. I won't talk much about that. I went past this slide a little bit quickly, so I just want to quickly note that there's something really important about having sort of career self-efficacy, really believing that you can tackle more than others think is possible because you're really confident in your work ability. Having career success and satisfaction really is foundationally dictated by this sort of career self-efficacy that you have. Remember Bandura's theories on self-efficacy. It's your ability to sort of achieve the goals that you have. Sort of having confidence in your capabilities to handle the sort of career development and work-related types of activities. All right, so how do we become gainfully employed? The book talks so much about this. It's one of the bummers about having really short lectures here that we're really just going to highlight some of these. And some of these will feel a little bit obvious. So, having a variety in what you do is sort of in day-to-day life. So, for your work to be fulfilling, you need to have a variety of duties. For your work to be fulfilling, you also a safe environment is crucial, because really, most injuries happen at work, and so a safe environment is really important. Obviously, having sufficient income for your family and yourself, a sense of purpose, engagement into what you're doing, knowing what the goals are and performing well, and then what we'll talk about again, and we've talked about so much throughout this class, that companionship, relationship quality is so important, and in this case, obviously, relationship quality in the workplace is so crucial. And so let's talk a little bit about this. So there's this really interesting idea of presenteeism, the sort of sense of being present physically, but actually unproductive because you're you're sort of there physically, but not there mentally. You can think of a person whose routines are so mundane that they can complete their task without even thinking about them. These are really the sort of really unhappy, individuals. Their work is aversive and repetitive. Cell manufacturing, where you sort of do the same thing over and over again, often really tries to decrease this boredom by having people actually be responsible for the entire sequence of product development. I mean, if you think about it's very difficult to have a person build an entire car, but obviously that's going to provide a lot of variety if you have to build everything. So job variety is really preferable than to doing the same thing over and over again, even if that job pays well. And that's really remarkable. Some behavioral economists have done some interesting work in trying to determine how much variety is worth sort of as a financial payoff. There's this really interesting program, positive parenting program. It's this effective evidence-based parenting program. You can actually look it up on the web. It's pretty easy. It gives parents simple tips for essentially how to balance work and family. Often what you can see is that it becomes very difficult. If you're really having this sort of work-life imbalance. So the problems can be anything from sort of toddlers, tantrums, and and teenager self-rebellion. And so what you really do is you sort of work to balance family and life in trying to find out exactly how much money to make. So, for example, the gainful employment model might actually say that if you're making lesson plans and teaching a really interesting class and you're planning these activities, but you're only making a small amount of money, that's actually probably better. And you're going to have again that spillover effect. So it's actually going to be probably better at your home life than to be doing something that's really unenjoyable. Engagement at work. So important. We've talked about how flow is so important in our day-to-day life, so it's not too surprising that it's really important in our work life. And what I really want to talk about just very quickly is how providing a service that seems like it's contributing to others or to society, sort of essentially being part of a business that's providing a needed product or a service, those types of contributions go a long way in making us really feel like we have purpose in our job. And so obviously if you feel like whatever you're doing is providing no necessary benefits to anyone, then you really aren't going to feel a lot of purpose or engagement in yours. And again, those contributions don't have to be relatively large. You don't have to be trying to cure cancer to feel like you have purpose in your job. I mean, you can be making contributions to others or society in relatively small ways, but as long as you're making contributions, that's the most important thing. One of the things that's really important is, if you're an employer and you're trying to increase performance and sort of job satisfaction, you really want to try and make sure that you have clear goals or sort of small goals that sort of lead up to the sort of larger company goals. And so what you can see in this sort of third bullet point is you have this high hope boss who sets achievable goals. Those goals are met. Of course, meeting goals increases our motivation. If we then are achieving sort of larger organizational goals, then you're going to begin to ultimately embrace the organization's objectives. Corporate America has really traditionally discouraged socialization at work, assuming that it would reduce productivity. But Tom Rath, who's written several amazing books, developed this Vital Friends assessment. He works with Gallup, and what he basically found is that companionship and loyalty are some of the most important contributors to happiness and satisfaction. And actually, one of the best predictors that you're going to be happy at your work is if your best friend works there. If you say that your best friend is actually at your work. A little bit left here on what supervisors can do. Again, providing clear job definitions will obviously increase satisfaction. But then one thing I want to talk about really quickly is how a high hope boss not only enjoys sort of these social interactions with their employees, but they take an active interest in how the employees are doing, both inside of work and outside of work, and kind of go the extra mile to ensure that their employees are doing really well. Running out of time here, so here's a great list of things that employees can do or employers can do to increase satisfaction of the people that work for them. And then really what I end with is ultimately read this slide here and question yourself if you don't feel like you're doing your calling. Try and strive for that.